who's going first? Yes.
I'll go first. What issues influenced your decision to run for a district court?
For me, it was giving back to my community. I'm from Durham. I've always lived in Durham. I went to Northern High School, came right across town over here. I still live in Northern Durham, and I just love supporting the children, especially in Durham, and making sure that everything they get what they need. Because sometimes people forget about the people that really can't vote or anything, but I make sure. That's why I just became a judge.
All right, great question. For me, I started out in the court system as a public defender, and so I stood side by side with my clients who were adults and also children in juvenile court for over 10 years. And that experience is what led me to want to become a judge, observing the disparate treatment that certain parties receive in our court system, which is a product of institutionalized inequities over a period of years, and wanting to be a part of being a judicial actor that is conscientious about these things, and specifically with respect to the disproportionate impact that we have in our court system on minorities, namely people of color, African Americans, our immigrants, and our low-income parties. And so wanting to be a judge that's committed to working on reforms to make sure that our court system administers justice fairly for everyone.
Thank you. Our second question was, do you believe anything needs to be changed within the current bail system for limited income youth, and if so, what?
Limited income youth. When you say youth, you mean as the law is now?
Yes.
Meaning people under the age of 16? First of all, they don't have bail. If you're in the as the juvenile system as it is now, you're either detained or you're released. And some of the we need more resources for the children that are there. As to the bail system, most children, they're released unless they're considered a danger to themselves or to the public at large, or they have a history of not coming to court.
I echo Judge Walker with respect to our juveniles. With respect to the juvenile court system, we don't use bail. I know that bail is a very important consideration in our general justice system, as it should be. And across the country, there have been some sweeping reforms made in 2 states, which is New Jersey and California. And I know that Durham is really invested in looking at ways to ensure that people's ability to pay, whether they are adults or children, because we do have what I consider children in our adult system now, which are 16 and 17-year-olds. Frankly, an 18-year-old, while they're an adult under the law, is a child to me. So yeah, those are very important considerations. In juvenile court, again, we don't look at ability to pay because the statute sets out very strict considerations. You have to, with respect to the juvenile offense, which is a crime in juvenile court, there are several factors, and you have to consider whether those are present. And then after that, you can also consider whether or not there's a less restrictive measure, meaning do you have an aunt, do you have a parent that can provide, or electronic house arrest to provide for their security. So money is not an issue for our juveniles, thankfully. And also, thankfully, now that we're going to have 16 and 17-year-olds in juvenile court, it won't be an issue for them either.
Thank you.
Yes.
So how would you address juvenile delinquency in general?
That's a big question.
That's a great question. I guess what we do now. I mean, you like she said, there are guidelines. There are certain things that you have to do. I mean, the main thing for me is to give kids something to do. We need to have kids. Kids need mentors. Kids need someone to look out for them, because a lot of times they don't have anyone. They're having problems in school, so we need to make sure that we have these resources for them out there in the community. Some kids, you'll be surprised, they don't have anything to eat. They might not have a place to stay. So the basic necessities, some of those type of things, and worrying about their parent, you have drug abuse issues, you have mental health issues, all of that play into why children come into the system. And until we decide to deal with that as a society, especially as people in Durham, we're going to have a juvenile system, juvenile delinquency system.
Yeah, so I think that it's a few things, and I agree with Judge Walker, who's one of our 2 full-time judges in Abuse, Neglect, and Dependency Court, which is where we have parents who are neglecting or abusing their children. And so what she's talking about is if we don't support the families and the parents of children, that we have children who are at risk because of the instability of their home, instability of their parents, and the resources that they have. But also, we do have to look to our schools very closely. For me, I feel very strongly that if we want to eliminate the school to prison pipeline, we must give more focus on what's happening with our disciplinary measures in the school system. Durham Public Schools revised its code of conduct a few years ago and is in the middle of a 5-year implementation plan of those revisions. And so Durham Public Schools is doing a lot to look at that system, and they already have, but there's a lot more that we can do, and it starts with making sure that we don't have unnecessary suspensions, because we know that once you take a kid out of school, they get behind their peers. And while we do have good programs, like a program I'm part of called Rebound, which provides schooling for kids, not everybody gets to go, and you will be set back. And so it just starts a pattern. So we've got to look at what's happening in the schools when children are in trouble. Why are they in trouble? Let's not just look at punishment. Let's look at what's going on outside of the school that is having that moment bubble up where they're in a fight. Let's not just throw them out of school. Let's look at what they need. And so I think that Judge Walker and I are speaking to that. Let's look at what they need.
What are your opinions on raising the age to 18 for trying youth as adults in North Carolina?
Well, it's going to happen. I think it's a great idea, but the thing you have to realize, and I'm hoping that will happen, is that we have the resources to make sure that the minors that are now going to be 18 and under, that they receive the mental health treatment, the substance abuse treatment. So we need to make sure that that happens. Some of the benefits is they'll no longer have criminal records. Even if their charges get dismissed, they have diversionary program. Their name is forever in that system. And you know, if somebody's ever arrested or somebody has a charge, even if it's on a citation, you could never see jail at all. But your name is now in the system, and you can have it expunged or whatnot. But it's there because the internet, we all know you can find anything on the internet, and somewhere your name will still be out there. So one of the good things about raising the age is that collateral consequence will no longer be there.
Right. I can't agree enough about the collateral consequences. That's something that that has been important to me for adults and youth alike. And I think there were two motivating factors to raising the age of juvenile jurisdiction. Juvenile court, again, is sealed from the public. There are still limited parties that have access to that information, like law enforcement, probation officers, the attorneys of the juveniles. And so it's not completely restricted, but that's a big part of it, that you can acknowledge that as kids we make mistakes, right? I don't think there's anybody that at some point when they were a teenager doesn't break the law, whether they know it or not. Everyone's done it. But if everyone were going to get brought into the criminal justice system and get a record and have that against them, that's huge. But the other main reason is that the juvenile court system operates completely differently. Its goal is rehabilitative. It has a slew of services to provide kids, whether it's mental health or substance abuse or whatever the issue may be, as Judge Walker is saying. But justice system for adults, while we are improving it now and across the country trying to change its focus, historically it has been punitive in nature. So I think it's a wonderful thing to raise the age. Yes.
I have a kind of follow-up question.
Yes.
So, about like rehabilitation in Durham, do you think that it's effective in like broad scheme, just looking at the system in Durham? Do you think the rehabilitation for juveniles is effective? And if not, like, what do you propose should be done to kind of remedy some of the issues?
I think it's somewhat effective. It depends on the individual person and what they put in and what kind of services they receive. There's a waiting list for a lot of services. Everybody cannot get into services. And then you have to have a buy-in, not only from the child, the minor, you have to have it from their family, you have to have it from society to be willing to make sure and give the support to the person that's found themselves in trouble to have what they need. In that sense, if all of those things come together, it is, I think the system works.
I think that is a really insightful question, because that's the thing, the system doesn't work for everybody and for a lot of people, adults and juveniles alike. And we're always constantly trying to prove it. We have specialty courts that focus on certain issues and areas, and I think the specialty courts are especially effective in helping people that participate in them because they get the time, attention, and breadth of services that they need. But with respect to juvenile court, I think a lot of it too is, when do you see a child come into the system, right? Whether it's in the court system or at school, the sooner that you identify there's a need and support that, the better the chances are that you're able to support that child to a different path. But when they come in later to the court system, it depends on the severity of the issue. When you have more serious crimes, and they end up in our worst cases in juvenile court, and they go to youth development. They go to our youth development sites, which is prison for juveniles. So I think it's a very tough question, and for some kids, yes, they're helped. But if you had them all in the justice system, I think the criminal justice system, you would see worse results.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you all think are the most important qualities that go into being a judge?
The ability to listen, to have patience, and just to understand people. Because if you don't understand people and different backgrounds and cultural differences, you're not able to effectively do your job. So you have to have those things. You have to know the people. One of the things I pride myself in, having been from Durham, a lot of people that come into the system, they're people that either I know or someone I know. I mean, I've had relatives that come in the system, and it's the ability to be able to relate to people and understand that even though they might not have the same issues as you have to be able to acknowledge and recognize those and listen to what they're trying to impart to you and do what you can for them.
Thank you. I think that sort of the obvious things are very important, that you know the law, that you can be fair, and you know that your job is not to come in the courtroom with an agenda, that you have to treat everyone the same and be completely neutral. We wear a black robe because we're just neutral, and to me it imparts the seriousness and gravity of what we do. But I think you can take any number of talented, smart attorneys and make them a judge that may know the law and that may know how to be fair and impartial. But if you can't find a judge that also has the qualities that Judge Walker is talking about, where you care about people and you want to relate to people, that is the biggest missing factor and piece that can cause you to have a judge that is not right for the court, in my opinion, because you have to be able to look at the person beyond the case. Yes.
Thank you.
Great questions.
Carolyn, or
When do we get to ask y'all questions?
5-minute warning? Oh, we have
It's
more
against the
time.
rules, right? I want to know why y'all are participating tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, if we have more time, why
You
not?
have more time. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to start?
Candidates ask you questions too. That's what's happening.
Can you tell us what grade you're in and why you're participating in this forum tonight? What interests you?
I'm in the 7th grade. I'm doing this because our social studies teacher told us about it, and it didn't seem like the worst thing to do.
I love it. Honesty.
That's an honest answer.
Fantastic. We're glad you're here.
I'm in 10th grade, and I'm coming to the forum because 1, I'm a moderator for it, and 2, I've been helping out with kids voting for a while now, and it's very interesting to me to kind of like interact with candidates and see how like different systems work in just Durham and just in like general. And I kind of wanted to go into law and like politics maybe when I was older, so it's something that interests me, and I want to be more like a part of it.
Great. Awesome.
I'm a senior, and I live here. But I'm here because I'm also a moderator, but also because starting in 10th grade, actually, I started getting really into government and politics as well, mostly because of my AP government politics class, but just understanding how the system works, and I've been trying to get more involved in the city because I love the city, and just like understanding more about the issues and how they can be confronted with positive solutions. So that's why I think things like this are really, really good. Thanks for coming.
I came here because a friend told me about it. He's actually here, and original plan was to be moral support, but now I'm.
Hey.
You never know when you're going to be turned
That's
into a leader.
right.
What grade are you in, Amelia?
Junior.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, I wish we had something like this when I was a kid, because there was nothing like this where I grew up. So, thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it.
We're ready for the unscripted questions.
Yeah, ask. Well, see what else you want to ask. You can ask something else. You can ask something about like what they do outside of because I mean they're not wearing the robes all the time.
That's true. So how are you guys involved with youth outside of your work?
That's a great question.
One of the things I do is I love mentoring kids because I feel that's the way they have some. Everybody don't have anybody. Some people are scared to go up to people thinking that we're not approachable and whatnot. I tell you, we're probably one of the most approachable people there. And that's what I was with a program called Partners for Youth. And even if I've been with the program since its inception, like over 20 years ago, and some of the mentors, I'm now mentoring their kids and whatnot. I also go speak places to youth. Also, I have interns during the summer and during the school year, and I like giving back because it gives people a chance to see what the court system is like from the judge's perspective. And you know, it's a different approach. And so I like giving back and mentoring and counseling and giving advice to future attorneys and whatnot.
Judge Walker is one of the judges that most frequently has an intern with her in the courtroom. There's always somebody helping out, which is great. So I am on the board of Juvenile Attorneys for Youth, which I mentioned earlier. It's a very unique program, and it is a nonprofit here in Durham that works with Durham Public Schools and any high school student in public schools, including charters, if they are suspended from anywhere from 1 to 10 days. Instead of being at home, they can go to Rebound, where there is a DPS teacher which will continue their studies. There's also other programs that they provide for other issues, underlying issues. And a mom, I have a 5-year-old son.
So, if Judge Pataglia and Mr. Hall can move from table number 1 to table number 2, Judge Maris and Judge Walker, you can move to table
Get ready for the
number 3.
next.